I'm taking a whiz.
At least one of you has manners. I thank you for your gift of moisture.
Follow-up stories can be tricky to land, especially when they are made over 20 years after the original, and this takes us to the latest offering from the Futurama revival, Parasites Regained, a sequel to arguably one of the best episodes of the original run, being Parasites Lost, where we see Fry eat a grotesque truck stop sandwich. On the sandwich are worm eggs that he eats that then hatch and take over his body, and despite being referred to as parasites, they unexpectedly transform him into his best self, fine-tuning his mind and body to become more intelligent and more athletic. Sounds incredible, right? Well, Fry had other ideas where this complicates his romance with Leela, and so he banishes the worms from his body. This time, we focus on Leela's super-intelligent pet Nibbler, who is now infected with the same worms. And even though themes and ideas are used from the first Parasite story, this episode does work as a standalone adventure. Most of it, funnily enough, is spent paying homage to the Frank Herbert story Dune, whilst also twisting familiar story elements and also introducing concepts that never actually made it into the original episode from season 3. Opening the episode, I like seeing the character chemistry expand between Leela and Nibbler beyond him just being her pet. These characters surprisingly have a lot in common, where you almost forget about him being, I guess, more animalistic in other scenes. And of course they had to bring back the classic gag where everybody is surprised that Nibbler can talk.
Nibbler, you can talk!
Keeping things familiar and I guess contained within the world of Futurama, this episode is full of references to Nibbler-specific episodes, but of course has its various callbacks to Parasites Lost. And one of my favourites was the subtle callback where we see Leela and Nibbler having coffee across the road from the Planet Express building. And I genuinely cannot recall seeing this location in any other episode of the series. And ironically, this is something the showrunners poke fun at in the audio commentary for Parasites Lost, laughing about how they've never actually returned to this location. If you recognise it from anywhere else in the series beyond these 2 episodes, then let me know in the comments. After brutally devouring a man and his dog, Nibbler coughs up a hairball, only to keep choking, falling ill, where Leela takes him to a vet, and it's then confirmed that Nibbler has worms, and that the worms are attacking his brain. Really unusual twist when compared to when Fry had them, since they made him super intelligent when he was hosting the worms. And so Nibbler is given medication to kill them off, but this doesn't appear to be working. Integral to the plot, Leela makes a point about the importance of Nibbler's litter box, where it's revealed that every time he uses it, he reinfects himself with the worms.
They reinfect him every time he uses it.
Then throw out the litter!
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of making the litter inside the box appear super important. It cannot just be replaced because it apparently comes from the Nibblonian's ancestral pooping grounds, which he needs to live, and we've never heard this before, and the way it's worded at first makes it sound so forced for the sake of the episode plot, which is luckily fleshed out more as the story continues, where most of this episode does take place inside the litter box, where the characters do actually shrink down to a microscopic size to fight the worms in person. Again, referring back to the audio commentary for the first episode, there was a huge debate over how the characters would shrink themselves down. Should they send small robots or actually shrink themselves? And they went with the former idea, where this time the professor uses a shrink ray on the main characters, and I like seeing unused ideas get their chance to make it into an episode. And with Nibbler's intelligence slipping away, Leela, Fry, Bender and Zoidberg enter the desert-like world of his litter box, and this sequence, shrinking down this toy tank with the characters inside whilst it rides on a Hot Wheels-style track, really did crack me up. Just another bizarre quirk to Professor Farnsworth, and how we see absolutely no preparation for these bizarre contraptions, making the reveal even funnier on screen. Entering the wasteland, no pun intended, I really appreciate the levels of world building and how the animation is approached, such as having stains on the inside of the purple litter box which are made to look like clouds in a purple sky. And getting into the Dune-specific lore, Zoidberg discovers the spice, giving us some incredibly trippy visuals, and I love the creativity behind this, and how the Dune story gets a lot of attention throughout. And this is where we learn about the established ecosystem within the sand, and the chaotic war between the insect-like animals, the various parasites, and the worms themselves, and our main characters are led to the worms by a faction of dung beetles, referred to as Dung beetles in case the references weren't obvious enough at this point. And appearing slightly different at first, the worms are definitely the same ones that Fry had, but they are redesigned as a collective to mimic the sandworms from Dune. And I really like this big reveal showing the levels of detail the animators are now able to achieve. Definitely a huge step forward in my opinion. Attracting the attention of the worms, this callback to one of the later Comedy Central episodes is also one of my favourites, where Bender changes into his tap dancing foot cups.
He's a dancing machine.
And this causes enough vibration to attract the worms, allowing for confrontation, and it's good to see Dave Herman voicing the main worm character once again, but I was a little disappointed with the dialogue exchange. It seemed a little lackluster, where I thought they'd perhaps recognise Fry, and that his presence would start a conflict between the characters. Nope, they don't recognise him at all. They've clearly moved on.
Only it made me smarter.
I'll take your word for it.
A somewhat pitiful fight breaks out. It doesn't really hold a torch to Fry fighting the worms originally, but there are some amusing moments to appreciate from the visuals. And using a similar trope to when Fry was elevated to a godlike position, Nibbler inhales the spice and shrinks himself down in his ship, and unexpectedly he puts an end to hostilities.
Okay, I'm done.
He's thought of as the Messiah, where breathing in the orange spice gave him a vision to understand why the environment within the litter box and the ecosystem that's been established is done in such a way. Everything has a purpose, everyone involved does have a key role, and Nibbler describes this system as perfect, and that if he must become a mindless house pet, so be it. And I really like how this sequence is written to be so close to the end of the episode, where you do genuinely start to wonder if this is going to become a permanent change on the series. Will Nibbler no longer be the secretive, super intelligent being we've known him to be in previous episodes? And it felt so out of character, where he just accepts defeat and allows the worms to stay, and Leela also accepts this and agrees with Nibbler's wishes, but then demands to know why Nibbler has had this very bizarre change of heart. Begging to use the vision-inducing machine held by the Dung beetles, she understands the ecosystem, but she notices something that everybody else has missed. The web of life extends even deeper, where the twist reveals that the worms themselves have parasites of their own. And this apparently is too far, where these little mites are extinguished with no hesitation.
We've gotta kill those mites.
With everything back to normal, this episode was honestly fairly generic, but I like how it was different enough from the first Parasite-based story. It uses elements from that episode in opposing ways, but also took inspiration from some of the unused concepts to keep things feeling engaging. And I did wonder if the writers were going to make this into a sad episode, where Nibbler would perhaps lose his intelligence by the end, but the stakes were not really high enough for this to be a shocking loss or change to the series. Plus, even though the worms are viewed as unwanted parasites, they aren't really enemies as such, which is a refreshing concept that makes killing them off appear more morally debatable. But with everything back to normal, I guess the worms now just live in Nibbler's litter box as part of that society. Maybe we'll see them again someday, but I think this episode was a satisfying reappearance enough for those characters. That's going to do it for this review and breakdown looking at Parasites Regained. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave me a like down below. Let me know in the comments how you felt about this episode. Did the writers play things perhaps too safe? Or did you like seeing these familiar characters return? As ever, I love hearing your thoughts and opinions. And for more content, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, DVD Review Studios.
Are you threatening me?